Thanks a lot. We will do a Q&A after the project, after the presentations, of course. But let me first indeed introduce the project. As you may be aware, it is branched off the call from the European Mission on Climate Change Adaptation, of Climate and Adaptation, which had the release of a research call where a couple of projects was funded. This project responded to the call that actually puts a base layer underneath the climate resilience capacity of regions in Europe by supporting the execution of climate risk assessments for the appropriate regions. If you slowly click a few times, because some elements will come up in the slide, you can see that this assignment is not trivial, because there's many challenges that are, of course, imposed to the European regions, all kinds of climatic features, but also at the regions, there's all kinds of challenges with infrastructure, with socioeconomic developments, demography, etc. There's many regions, of course, that have very specific profiles. There's many sources of data and scenarios that can be tackled with. And last but not least, we are not only looking at, say, the climate change timescale. If you click once more, it's also intended to service the civil protection, the units that are actually charged with adapting to climate change because of an increasing or a trend in the likelihood or severity of the impact. So our sort of standardized motto for the project is that we try to standardize flexibility, or to have a flexible standardization of the approaches. The project is implemented, if you go to the next slide, please, in a couple of pillars. There's actually 3 different main pillars. The first one is to actually supplement the existing frameworks for regional climate risk assessment in a bit more, say, practical way. Of course, there's quite a few frameworks around, and I'll very briefly touch on what our framework is about. The next one is that we will provide a toolbox that is supporting regions to carry out such a climate risk assessment. For sure, for regions that have not experience with procedures, modeling capabilities, or data, we provide a toolbox that provides a background layer of information and toolkit that can be carried out to sort of make a quick scan of a regional climate risk assessment. And the third one, last but not least, is that we will also provide funding to regions that are intended to carry out a climate risk assessment. So we are really aware that many regions or municipalities may have limited capabilities to carry out such a risk assessment, and for that we provide funding to either recruit these capabilities from external services, or to allocate funding to personnel that is inside the regional authorities that can then spend dedicated time to carrying out that risk assessment. Click once more. On the framework, we have a nice cartoon with a sort of a stepwise procedure that will guide the applicant through a couple of steps that kind of make sense if you think about it carefully. Yeah? So you first make maybe some kind of an institutional analysis of what's actually the setting of the climate policy and which agencies are involved. But of course also what is already experienced in terms of climate risk, what are the sensitive sectors, which regions have specific vulnerability profiles. That is part of the framework. Of course, there is a step in the framework that gives practical guidance on the selection of data, the selection of scenarios, the combination of different types of information that can be complementary, that together form the whole say carrier of the risk profile. And we also would like to have the applicant think about what is actually the follow-up of the risk assessment procedure. For what purpose is it carried out? What kind of adaptation strategies, or maybe emergency management plans, risk management plans? What are the potentials to use the risk assessment for updating these strategies? That is what the framework will help you through in a kind of systemized way. The toolbox is the next slide. It has the pretty ambitious structure that we actually want to serve a very wide portfolio, wide range of potential users. We do understand that a lot of practitioners or decision makers that deal with climate policies or risk management policies may not have very detailed experience in all the technicalities of a risk assessment, but would like to have a kind of an overview of what actually the risk profiles are. And so the toolbox will have a base layer where, similar to the risk data hub, or actually incorporated from the risk data hub, that gives a sort of a dashboard kind of display of what the current risk profile looks like. We have on the second layer a bit more advanced level where online attributes of the risk picture can be changed. Like we can upload different layers of data, for instance, for land use or for population or for other attributes that relate to exposure or vulnerability. We could even think of different hazard data sets. And those can be explored online. We are working on a facility that can also be stored and uploaded to a user corner in the Risk Data Hub, but that is still under development. And the third layer is really for the experts. You can actually download everything that is contained in the toolbox. All the scripts, all the data, all the procedures, all the guidelines can be downloaded to your own platform. And there, of course, it can be tailored to whatever edits you may find appropriate. We can think of implementing different risk calculation procedures, different combination of layer, conditional sampling of data sets, etc., etc. So it is quite ambitious to cater quite a large range of potential users. But as such, we hope that it is a useful asset for propagating the art of doing risk assessments. And then finally, the funding system, if you click once more here. It is what we call a cascading fund. So the project CLIMAAX has received funding from the European Commission, and we cascade that through to regions that apply. We are aiming for at least 60 regions within Europe to be granted a funding resource. We will follow a formal application procedure. So regions will be asked to put together a proposal how to carry out the risk assessment procedure, which of course contains the elements of the description of the practical implementation, a description of the landscape within which the risk assessment will be carried out, the follow-up to upcoming risk policies and adaptation policies. And we have put in place a formal procedure for selection and comparison between different proposals, which leads to a ranking. And that subsequently leads to a funding of course, the top set of ranked proposals up until the limit of the available funding. We have a first call planned to open already 8th of December, so in 3 weeks from now. And it will be open for 3 months, so early March is the deadline for application. But we do not expect that that all the regions are already able to respond to this call that quickly. We also can anticipate that in this first call, that some skewness in the regions that will apply occurs. The mission and our project have explicitly aimed to provide funding to regions that are where a climate risk assessment has the most potential to lead to improved resilience against climate risks. So we do favor the more vulnerable regions or the regions with least experience or least capabilities. If in the first call it appears that a contingent of regions is underrepresented, a second call will be opened, and we will probably adjust a bit the selection criteria to rebalance the portfolio of successful applications in order to maximize the spread over the target areas. So, and that is the second round. We have not yet decided when that will open, but that is probably in end of May 2024. And again, that call will be open for 3 months. So you will be notified by another webinar like this and other communication channels in due course.
Recording in progress.
The projects will have to end before the project CLIMAAX ends, which is by the end of 26. So that means that on average the projects will be carried out up to say 22 months after signing the contracts. One slide further, then that gives a bit of a sort of structural overview of what we actually how the proposal should be structured. If you click once, 2, 3 times very slowly, the first phase we anticipate to do sort of a what we call a quick scan or an early application of what the toolbox is about. So it is a bit of a first a quick scan risk assessment for the region, just using the toolbox that we provided and the data that is there. Of course, for the region, a bit more interesting would be then the second phase, where you can tailor the information or the procedures for your specific region. And that is also the bulk of the activities we expect to take place. And in a third line, which actually should end by month 22 and not 24, I see the mistake, is the sketch of how the climate risk assessment will be followed up in subsequent adaptation or risk mitigation plans. I think that's it for now. If you can click once more to see where we are now. Oh yeah, maybe I can tell a bit about the side effects, maybe one click further. This is of course to service the regions to carry out this risk assessment, but we also want to learn something from it. So we have, for instance, during the project, we are carrying out a couple of pilot regions, or we are exploring a couple of up to 5 pilot regions. Here you see a picture of a site visit to the Catalonia pilot region that we visited 2 months ago. And that is to actually prototype the risk assessment procedure, and also to have people carrying out the risk assessment in a way that is really learning for how the call will be set up and the toolbox will be set up. If you go to the next slide, we deliberately will choose to have the regions also to carry out the first batch of risk assessment using the toolbox, only because that gives us an opportunity to make a comparison of how the risk assessment will be performed over a large batch of European regions. And that comparison probably gives also a very lots of information about the spatial distribution of the risk assessment uptake capabilities and the approaches, and is again to learn and improve the support for regional risk assessments for, of course, a much larger contingent of potential regions that are may be interested on it. If you click once more. Yeah, so these are the lessons to be learned from that analysis of all the regions that will receive funding. So you will be asked to also do a bit of monitoring on the risk assessment, and indeed that first batch of activities is supposed to provide some kind of a standardized set of results that we can then use in across European comparison. And finally, I'm also quite much interested to learn from this in my personal new role. I'm a co-chair of Work Group 2 of IPCC for the cycle that just started. So I will be working for IPCC working group on climate impacts and adaptation for the next couple of years. And I feel that this kind of risk assessment is a very useful resource for also IPCC reporting. And if you click once more, we really have the ambition to make the upcoming reports a bit thinner. You can see here how thick they were in the past, but target much more on the information that is needed for practical decision taking, in this case in the realm of climate adaptation or risk management. And so this kind of project is also helpful for giving guidance on what is actually then the information that we do need to implement or include in the IPCC reports, to help society prepare for better a future climate conditions. And I think that is the first part I would like to briefly stop to see if there is already questions on this part from a technical nature. Yep,
Thank you very much, Bart.
Yeah.
There's quite a number of questions coming in right now. So I think the best idea is for me to read them out, and then we can get to them. We do have slightly limited time today, so I hope we get to all of the questions. If it's not possible to answer them in the moment, then we can also figure out a way to address them later on via email, for example. But the first question is, just to test my understanding, does this mean that regions that already have a risk and vulnerability assessment and want to update them for new risks and vulnerabilities should best wait until the second call?
No, it's up to the region, of course, yourself. I think also for the first call that is equivalent. If you are indeed in the situation that an update of the current risk assessment is desirable, also the first call is eligible for that, for sure.
Okay, that's great. I see a question from the Tirana municipality in Albania. Asking if only EU member states are eligible to participate.
No, it is also associated member states that are eligible. So every country that is also eligible to commit to, for instance, the mission charter is also eligible for this funding.
Great. And then the next question is, I would like to know whether the results of the 2 calls will be sent to the member states participating in the Mission Climate Program Committee. What's more, what are the selection criteria for the calls and how is the evaluation carried out?
Yes, we will publish the selection of successful applicants. The call criteria, it has to be either a region or a regional community, which has some kind of a legal entity, of course. It has to consist of an authority that is charged with risk management in climate adaptation or emergency response. What other eligibility criteria? Of course, they have to have a risk management kind of culture. So we do expect that the risk assessment is entering a risk management policy procedure that at the end is serving the population living in the region to be better prepared for or protected against extreme climate. So those are kind of the eligibility criteria.
Thank you very much for that. We will have another presentation today about the open call in a little bit more detail. And I see, for example, another question on eligibility, which I think has been addressed. The slides, we will upload them to the website afterwards. So don't worry, you will be able to read all information back there as well. Then we have another question, just coming from the Pathways to Resilience presentation. How does CLIMAAX link to that? As a region, does it make sense to apply for both?
Yes, it does. In fact, we are kind of aligned. The logic is that you normally do first a risk assessment, and subsequently that risk assessment can inform you on a policy pathway where the Pathways to Resilience project could help out. We can also figure that these support functions are running in parallel, but in the end will be stitched together. So it perfectly makes sense to apply in both for both kinds of support functions. Yes, okay. And we may even be able to help out with the coordination or synchronization between the 2 calls, because some participants in the CLIMAAX project also have a small role in the pathways to the other project, and vice versa. So we are intended to help out for synchronization if that's desirable.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We have another question. Can we apply as a cluster of municipalities?
Yes, that I think is eligible.
I'm sorry, Bart, actually no. We are only taking individual applications from regions or communities. So not teams, not consortia.
Okay,
Sorry.
I was going to say, if there is some kind of a legal entity that is binding different municipalities into some one, say, risk management entity, authority, then that's the way I would figure that you could do so. But indeed, a clustered approach will indeed not be possible without a single legal authority that is taking responsibility of the execution of the CRA. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Sorry for stepping in.
No. Good to highlight this nuance. Thank you, Anke.
All right. Okay, another question here from Bethany in this case. Though the UK is considered an associated country as of 24, it is not eligible to the Pathways to Resilience program due to the year that budgets are coming from. Please, can you confirm whether the same applies for CLIMAAX or whether the UK is eligible?
I see Anke nodding that indeed the same applies to CLIMAAX,
Yes.
and I wouldn't see a reason why not, because we are funded under exactly the same call and procedural requirements.
The UK is not eligible because the agreement treatment between the Union and the UK will enter into force starting with the 1st of January 2024, and we are financed under the budget of 2021.
Yes.
2022, sorry. So no, UK applicants are not eligible. They are not an associated country to this project.
All right. Then can we apply as a single municipality? I think we addressed that just now. Can a university also participate in this call?
Yes, but they have to be recruited then as a potential partner by an authority that is eligible to say carry out risk assessments. So we do not see a university acting as a principal applicant for this. I think you should be collaborating with a regional authority that is eligible for this call.
Okay. Another question from Tanya. Thank you so much for the presentation. Can cities apply to update their vulnerability assessments in order to update the civil protection plans?
Yes, that definitely is part of the target. Yes.
Okay. And then Michal is saying, so there's no obligation the applying municipality to be more than 50,000 citizens.
I don't recall any requirement on the size of the municipality to apply. No, either a lower limit or an upper limit. I don't know of any restriction on the size of the municipality.
Okay, thank you very much for all of your questions. I like it a lot that everyone is very proactive in asking them.
Yeah.
So I think we could move on to the second part of the presentation, if you agree.
Yeah, that's fine. And yes, I would like to elaborate a bit on what it actually means to make a regional climate risk assessment and what is actually our intended contribution to the added value of it. So if you click once more, if you take a regional emphasis, it implies quite a bit in terms of what kind of data and what kind of procedures one would use. And so we are really focusing a lot on local detail, but also on climatic features that make sense at a local scale. And I'm just guiding you a bit through, say, available scientific information on risks and distribution of risks to try to point out what I mean with what we actually try to add in terms of relevant contribution to the regional side of it. So if you click once more, those people that are familiar with risk assessment or risk analysis and in the context of, for instance, IPCC or the climate change, they will maybe recognize this figure that is one of the highlight figures from the last IPCC report. On the left-hand side, you see scenarios of global warming on a global scale. On the right-hand side, you see a diagram, what we identify as burning embers, which for a couple of, say, characteristic areas or biotopes or regions or whatever, continental regions, depict at what temperature level, what risk level is actually applicable to that area. And yeah, apart from the fact that this display sometimes is a bit complex, it takes quite a bit of while to understand what's actually there. The aggregation that is needed to come to figures like this is enormous. The risk is pooled in very large regions or very large sectors or in very large, say, biotopes or whatever. And as such, it is informative on what, say, a future climate warming could do to the risk profile and will do to the risk profile, but it's not very informative on how much, how this applies to a specific region that is exposed to maybe a specific mountain range where flash floods are there, and with some kinds of snow climatology and wind gusts that always come, and if one type of circulation takes place, etc., etc. So this level of aggregation is generally very coarse. So if you go to the next slide. Also, what we rarely see very clearly in these IPCC assessments is to make sense of what happens in just a particular year. If you look at the past year, 2023, many people will have picked up the lots of media attention for a lot of exotic features that emerge. Like in this case, there is an extremely high temperature recorded over the years, and also extremely high sea surface temperature in the Atlantics, etc. Record-breaking features. On the next slide, you see the same with the sea ice retreat on Antarctica that is unprecedented in whatever form. On the next slide, you see again the image of forest fires that all over the planet, in Canada, in Siberia, in Southern Europe, name it, lots and lots of forest fires are there. And so very often when then people ask, yeah, is this a feature of climate change? It is always a kind of an answer, yes, this fits in the picture, but specifically this kind of scenarios, you cannot easily find them in the very generic IPCC scenarios of either climate change or the impacts of climate change. So what does this mean at a regional scale is really what we would like to add in our risk assessment. On the next slide, you can also see a bit of a sort of a narrative of how we are helping the regions go through this exercise of making sense of the climate change signal at the regional scale. And so typically for every region, you first make an overview of what kind of hazards are actually relevant for the regions of interest. And then that, of course, that's sort of a drop-down menu you could even see. But every region has its own combination. For each of these hazards, there is quite a different range of potential methodologies to make an assessment out of this. But sometimes it's very relevant to go back to past data to see what was actually the consequence of that hazard, and to reassess that same kind of events that happened in the past for future conditions. In other senses, you take very localized data that are downscaled to the region to see what is actually the changes in the probability of this kind of hazards, and many other methodologies apply as well. If you go one step further, this is going pretty well, Jip, this joint presentation mode. So thanks for the support for this. Then also there is a lot of local information that needs to be combined there. So the generic climate features like seasonal mean temperatures or precipitation percentage of precipitation change, that normally doesn't take into account, that does not carry the information that generates a hazard. You have to generate climatic indicators that are applicable to the region that actually display what the hazard is about. So what is the extreme once per year or once per 10-year precipitation amount, of what is the highest temperature that is accounted in a period of 10 years or whatever. All these thresholds are very often locally very specific in terms of their impact. In many different regions, the point where a climate index is becoming hazardous is really can be at very different levels. For future conditions, again, a lot of optional scenarios apply, and I'm gonna display a bit on that in a minute as well. And last but not least, all kinds of future projections. If you click once more, there is a lot of sometimes ambiguity in the different projections. We are all aware that the climate models that are used, even the regional models, to make these projections, they are not free of biases. So some procedures have to be accounted for to correct these biases. Also, many hazards, they are driven by multiple hazards at the same time. Flooding in a coastal area is it's very often the consequence of both a storm surge driven by wind and maybe a lot of rainfall from the inland that may jointly lead to a hazard profile, just as an example. So a lot of tailoring on these generic scenario information is needed. If you click once more, it's not only the tailoring, also obviously, and that is in people's minds. If you click once more, spatial resolution also comes into play. You see on the middle figure here on the screen, say the typical resolution, even of a pretty high resolution regional climate model, at 0.11 degrees resolution, so that's about 10 kilometers. And at the same scale, you see the city of Barcelona and its typology and its temperature distribution for a heat day on the other side. So you can see an incredible need for spatial downscaling. That also has to be taken into account in the toolbox that we are providing. Next slide is talking about the attributes of what the risk drivers are. If we look at, for instance, one of the pilots in the project is the country of Latvia that is updating their risk assessment. This is a snapshot from the current risk profile for Latvia floods that is taken from the Risk Data Hub. But of course, floods have different drivers and different features. In this case, there is a distinction between floods that are related to, say, spring snowmelt from the mountainous areas, which has a totally different physical but also temporal origin than summer floods from excessive rainfall, for instance. And if we click once more, if you go at about what is actually the regional projections for this region, in terms of temperature and precipitation change, you can see a plot on this slide, which is a scatter plot of regional climate model projections for the Latvia area. And on the horizontal, you can see the percentage change of precipitation for that region. On the vertical, you see the temperature change for that region. And the colors indicate different, what we call, emission-driven climate scenarios, what we call SSPs, or social sectoral pathways. And so that's a family of emission scenarios where the blue colors are related to the emission scenarios with low carbon emissions, and the red colors are higher emissions. These are wintertime responses, and you see a very strong correlation that the warmer it gets, of course, also the more precipitation change will take into account. But if you switch to the summer condition, if you go to the next slide, that relationship is totally different. That is obvious. There, the precipitation change is actually pretty small, and the only attribute that is changing is temperature. If you look at the scenario mean differences, that small arrow that you see on the bottom, the difference between in precipitation response between the scenarios is very small. Yeah, but if you look at the spread in the individual ensemble projections for each of these scenarios, that is 10 times larger, and these are changes with an average of 30 years. So you can have a point of a 20% rainfall in the next 20 years, or a 20% reduction of rainfall in the next 20 years. And that is not represented at all by the mean emission-driven climate scenarios, but they are a realistic range of systematically changing conditions for the near future. So an extremely relevant notion of the range of future climate conditions to which the region needs to be prepared. So finally, I'll wrap up here. So the two messages here: the projections show very large seasonal changes. Well, that is normally pretty well covered also in the IPCC or Cordex scenarios, but that internal variability, or that very large range within a given emission scenario, which are a huge implication for local adaptation and risk management options, is normally not captured very well. And that is also what we really would like to offer as an analysis functionality in our toolbox. So I think I'll leave it here. The next slide is, I think, the wrap-up slide that again emphasizes, one click more, I think that's the last statement. It emphasizes our ambition to really focus on the local detail and for the local region also detect which are the drivers that are relevant for that region. And that is exactly where the toolbox and the climate support is about. Thank you, Jip, for maybe some more questions.
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation, Bart. Very interesting. And I would like to check indeed if we have questions coming in the chat box that we haven't addressed yet. Also, if because of timing or any other issue we cannot get to your question, please feel free to also send it to us via email or social media, and then we'll get to that as well. Let's see where we left off with the questions. Okay. All right. So I think that the question where we left off is from Magdalena. Thank you for the response regarding the university. I wanted to inquire about how it is possible to establish a partnership with a municipality if a consortia cannot participate. Is that something that you would like to touch upon, or maybe that's more for Anka?
No, yeah, I think I can touch upon it. I think it is, I would expect that if the university has experience with these risk assessments, it would be helpful if maybe you have already relationships with municipalities where your experience has been tested, or whether a municipality would be interested to use your expertise. Maybe you could, as a university, could serve as, say, an external service that helps the implementation of the risk assessment. But we do not organize some kind of a matchmaking between applicants and potential contributing partners. That is something you could do yourself. There is, of course, the mission charter that provides lots of platforms where people with questions and answers come together. The MIP for Adapt project that is running, that is actually executing the platform for the mission, also accounts for, say, portals where partners can meet, and there's forum discussion. So that could also be an entry point to do a bit of matchmaking. But the project will not cater for some kind of a matchmaking functionality. Sorry for that.
Thank you very much. Just as we ended that segment, there is another question. Do the applicants, must the applicants be charter signatories?
No, that is not obliged. Of course, when you are a charter signatory, you are, per definition, I would say, eligible for funding or for application, but you do not have to sign the charter at this stage. No.
All right, thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for your presentation, and also the audience for their questions, of course. I think I'd like now to welcome Milana Vukovic to the stage from ECMWF, and she will showcase the CLIMAAX Toolbox that we've been talking about a little bit before, a powerful resource designed to assist in climate risk management. And I'd say let's explore its functionalities through this presentation and demonstration. Milana, feel free to share your screen.
Just 1 second. Okay. Okay. Do you see my screen and hear me well? Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Milana Vukovic, and I work at European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecast, ECMWF. And in CLIMAAX project, we are in charge of building the toolbox, co-building with other partners, and organizing the support later in the project. Today, this thing works. I will talk about what is the toolbox, what does the toolbox look like, and how you can use the toolbox to do climate risk assessment. First, a little bit about what is the toolbox and its structure. Here, I will use the kitchen analogy to describe the structure of the toolbox. Here in the climate risk assessment, the climate risk assessment expert we envision as a master chef, and in CLIMAAX we have gathered climate risk assessment experts and master chefs and partners from 5 regions in Europe to prepare the bakery store. The bakery store holds the knowledge and the tools for the practical climate risk assessment, and the knowledge is represented by the framework, and the practical work is represented by the toolbox. The toolbox also contains the code to calculate necessary indices and to plot the data and on maps or graphs. As a new chef, somebody new wants to do a climate risk assessment for their region. They can come and learn and choose then what recipe to try out. Then they can bring this recipe to the kitchen, and depending on the technical knowledge, they can choose which kitchen to use. And I will explain these kitchens in a little bit. And to produce the dish, of course, we need some ingredients, and the ingredients are the data. Some of the data is provided by well-known climate and risk data providers, such as Copernicus Climate Data Store or JRC's Risk Data Hub. And for these data, the instructions are instructions and the code, how to use it, how to find it, download and explore are provided with each recipe. However, users can bring their own data to the kitchen and use it as well. Once the dish is prepared, the climate risk assessment document is produced, the work doesn't necessarily need to end. Some new chefs, new regions can provide inspiration for the inspirational workflows for others to maybe use. And the procedure on how to share workflows and how to contribute back to the collection of recipes and cookbooks will be provided. So then region can provide back their recipe and their cookbook back to the framework and toolbox and collection through the GitHub platform. And what does the toolbox look like at the moment? The bakery store is a website where all the recipes, cookbooks, and ingredients needed for the climate risk assessment can be found, and in one place. From there, risk recipes are actually integral part of the toolbox. They are presented as Jupyter notebooks, and then users can read them from the book, but also they can try and execute code by themselves in one of the kitchens. The recipes can be explored and by different hazards at the moment, or the exposure and vulnerability, and then they can be used to calculate risks or to explore the climate risk assessment outcomes. The risk cookbooks, they contain these various risk assessment recipes. They also provide a supply closet for the data supplied by us, and they also provide files for all the necessary files and the instructions for the installation of everything that is needed. The kitchen is intended for 3 levels of use. For the new users who are not experienced, they can with one click in the bakery store, they can open this binder kitchen will open, and the user can just click away, try out the code, and here it is like a sandbox. So nothing is saved. You can't break anything. You will not It is just for playing around and for learning. The second kitchen is a cloud space that will be provided for the selected participants in the open call. There also everything will be installed for the users. All the recipes, all the cookbooks will be there, and whatever is done then is saved, and there will be a space for your own work, for your own data. Finally, the most technical users can download the cookbook and install everything on their local computer and change everything and produce them from there, the new workflows. So all of this enables co-creation of the new recipes from the kitchen, from your kitchen back to our bakery store. And now I will actually show you how at the moment it looks like and how you can use it in a little demo. Okay, so at the moment our bakery store is a website that holds some information. Is still work in progress. We are still filling it with the knowledge. And it is in the form of what is called executable book. So it is like a book, but some parts of it, like these risk recipes, are actually executable. So you can see, you can go here and read one of the, this is flood risk assessment. You can read, you can find explanations about the data, links to where the data lives, list of all the libraries that might be needed for this work assessment, all the code that can be copied if you want to take it out of here and just use it, and detailed instructions of how to download the data, how to explore the data, and then how to calculate some, for example, damage using this damage scanner library. Finally, then you can plot the results. So here we can only read it. However, all of these recipes, for now we will have these 6 groups of recipes. They will all be in this middle kitchen called Jupyter Hub, where each person, when they log in, they will have the notebooks already there. So everything that is in a book is also copied here automatically. So all the files, all the if you need some small data, everything is here. We can start this. This is the same notebook that we saw in the book here. We can see it here, and then here we can execute everything and change what we want. This is the middle one, and if we just want to have a look on without having to change, we can. Every notebook will have this binder button, and then when this is clicked, everything should be the same thing will start here as here. Just here it will be public one, and here it is only for our users. And yes, this is for now a little a tour with of the toolbox. And I left some time for questions.
Thank you very much for that. Very interesting. Yes, we do have a question from Mark asking, is the website for the toolbox already online? And
Yes.
if so, could we send the link in the chat?
Yes, of course. I just need to find the chat. Yes, it is online, but it is heavily under construction. So we expect by the time the regions start that we have something stable and something that is usable. Right now there is not too much knowledge inside. We will add it in the next couple of months, and also some of the workflows, not everything is completely tested. So
all right. There is another question coming in from Stefan. What are the technical skills needed to use these tools? Do you need to be able to write Python code?
Yes and no. So it helps a lot if you are able, but we plan to put resources inside the toolbox if somebody is new, if somebody is learning, if somebody came from GIS world. We will provide a lot of resources on learning about Python, about working with the data, and working with Git. So we also plan later to have more of a dashboard functionalities. However, this is not there yet, so I can't show. But the plan is to have something that is also for less technical users.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question from Nicholas. What would be the coding level for the future users? Can beginners use the easiest kitchen without being overwhelmed?
We hope so. Yes, the idea is not to overwhelm the users. And if somebody is overwhelmed, then they can go back to the resources and learn the basics and come back to our tools.
Okay. And can data be exported easily to QGIS? I don't know if I pronounced that well.
Yes, the idea is that the results are saved as GeoTIFF, and then it is or NetCDF, and then that can be imported in GIS. We have a couple of colleagues who are experienced with GIS, so we check that everything can be actually then used in QGIS as well.
Okay, and then the next question would be, is it possible to integrate this type of data in digital twins?
I don't know the requirements of the digital twins, but it should be. I don't see why not.
All right. Carlo asks, are there any restrictions to users or access to the toolbox?
No. So the book, the website is public. It will be public. Anybody can use it, and everything except our cloud environment is public. So the Jupyter Hub environment that I showed is the only part that is not public. But nothing stops anybody to use public binder or to download any material and use things locally.
All right, thank you very much for that. Then we have a question from Tanya saying, again, many thanks for the presentation. Some questions. Can we load some geographical information specific of our city at the platform, for instance, data from buildings to access their risks or to heat waves, for example?
Yes, so the users who will have access to the Jupyter Hub will be able to upload their own data, and this is only they will have the access to this data. So this data will not be shared with other users. So if the data is not public, that will be completely fine. And we also plan to have examples from our 5 pilot regions about working with local data and doing climate risk assessment with local data as well.
Great to hear. The access to the toolbox is only for those organizations that apply for the Cascade financing?
Only the cloud Jupyter Hub. Everything else is public and is accessible to anybody. Anybody can use it, explore it. It is public, and it will stay public.
Okay, that's very good to hear. Thank you very much for the great insight into the toolbox and the demonstration. I thought it was very valuable. Also, thank you very much for answering the questions that the chat has. If you have any other questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to do so, or send us a message later on via email or one of our social media channels. I'll now start sharing my slide again, so that we can move forward with the rest of the presentations in this info day. We had a great overview of the broader aspects of the project, of the toolbox, and now we're also excited to introduce you to 4 of our pilot regions that are participating. We have Finland, Catalonia, Setúbal, and Salina here with us today, who will share their experiences and insights with us. First up, I would like to welcome Riikka to the stage, who will explain a little bit more about Finland's position in the project. Do we have Riikka with us this afternoon? I think there might be some technical difficulties because I do see you here in the participants list. So I suggest that we start with the next presentation and then we come back to...
Okay, how about now?
I hear you.
Better?
I hear you.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
our Jabra
perfect.
doesn't work. Sorry, sorry.
No worries at all.
Okay, so hello everybody and greetings here from Kuopio. It's very snowy here and here in Finland. I'm presenting some of our pilot, and my colleague here is talking a little bit more. So my name is Riikka Salmi and I'm working as Emergency Service Academy Finland as a researcher, and here's my colleague. Also, Juha Laitinen, and now something happened again. And he is a senior researcher and my colleague here. And our pilot aim or task is to test this pilot, and I'll tell a little bit about background. So we have this leadership of major accident and crisis situation exercise, and it actually happens here every year, annual, in our Emergency Service Academy Finland. And next year theme is training situation and command center operations, because we have some changes, so in accordance in future guidelines. And there are practicing officers, sub-officers, and many various authorities like police and defense forces. And there are like crisis situational center where they have given rescue alarm, and they practice like their leadership and in crisis and being in a force, and they cooperate with various authorities. And why this? This is the practice where we are going to test our pilot, like within this exercise. So you have to tell a little bit, like next slide, about this our exercise.
Okay, hello everybody from my side too. Finnish pilot is executed in cooperation with our Ministry of Interior and Finnish Meteorological Institute and Emergency Service Academy. And in our pilot, there will be 2 different scenarios, which both dealing with the major forest fire. And the aim of the pilot is to test by the toolbox how climate change will change forest fire risks during the next 100 years. And our Finnish Meteorological Institute will provide also additional information to our scenarios by their natural disaster warning system, Luova, which gives our incident commanders information about real-time weather conditions and also prediction for the next 2 or 3 hours. Also, they will provide us information about the spreading models of the fire, which will give the information of propagation of the fire, and also it will give us information that how large evacuation we have to do. Also, we try to use spreading models for the contaminants, which will give us information of spreading of contaminants and also with the needs for the evacuation. Next slide, please. Thank you. What are we waiting for this pilot? Well, we want to see that what kind of impact of climate change will be for the forest firefighting in future. And also we wanted to see how these different kind of systems, how they deserving first responders, and is there something what we have to improve or change in these systems. Also, we need information that what kind of new resources we will need in future for extinguishing these forest fires. And last but not the least, we will get information which support decision making and also the understanding what kind of challenges we will have in future to this climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this overview. Very useful and inspiring. Thank you very much for that. I'd now like to give the floor to the Catalonian delegation that we have with us today.
Thank you, Jip. Well, good morning to everybody. My name is Ainara Casajos Valles, and I am a technician of the Civil Protection Directorate within the Interior Department of the Regional Government of Catalonia in Spain. And as Jip said, I will briefly present the pilot of our region, its characteristics and the motivations that we have to engage in the project. If we can move to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, maybe we should, okay, thank you. The region of Catalonia, which is in the northeast of Spain, has 8 million people, and almost half of the population, they live in the city of Barcelona or around it. And there is an important also concentration of population in our coast, but still most of the municipalities in the region have less than 5,000 inhabitants. The region is quite varied. We count with more than 500 kilometers of coast, and we have different ranges of mountains. The most important of them are in the Pyrenees, as you may know. Also, we have different river basins, but the majority are medium or small ones, and they generally lead to the Mediterranean Sea, and we enjoy of a Mediterranean climate, actually. It's important also to mention that Spain is a decentralized state where based on competences, and that means that the regional government of Catalonia manages and coordinates actions to protect people, assets, and the environment threatened by catastrophes or disasters. And the system of the civil protection is based on the collaboration of different services and resources, both private and public. And one of our goals is actually to identify and assess risk and its impact, to carry out prevention or also intervention actions. And we also are in charge of informing the population and of taking care of recovery tasks. The latest study of climate scenarios for the region that have been prepared by the Meteorological Service of the region states that the annual average temperature will increase no matter which scenario we consider. Both maximum and minimum temperatures are expected to grow. And in terms of precipitation, it's quite uncertain, but in general, it's observed that there will be a reduction in the annual average for the region, and also the number of consecutive days with no rainfall will potentially increase, which is very important because that means that it will lead us to more intense dry periods. And also overall, we count with, in the region, there is this Catalan strategy to adapt to climate change, 2021-2030, which is also our framework, which aims to improve the adaptation of the region to climate change and reduce its vulnerability through different objectives. And it's interesting because in this strategy was incorporated measures directly that are that are directly engaging civil protection system. For example, it says that the current plans, they should incorporate climate change, and it's necessary to create proper mechanisms to detect hazards and also to support prevention efforts, and also to reinforce financial instruments and to strengthen the communication with population. So this is more or less the frame that that also motivates our work. So if we move to the next slide, as a pilot, there are many hazards that could be of concern, but we decided to focus on those three, where for the first one, for wildfires, I mean, most of our territory is occupied by forests, and we suffer wildfires every year. We have long experience on that. So considering the future changes in temperature and in rainfall and the amount of days that will be also very dry, as civil protection, we are interested in many things. And here there are some of the questions that we already have, let's say, like, for example, understanding if new areas will be at risk and how long the season could become, and which more efforts should we devote if we want to prepare for extreme fire danger, or also if the fire will change in behavior. Besides that, historically, the latest damages and losses registered in Catalonia are related to floods. And it's interesting to know that most of the casualties are reported in secondary basins, so to say, in water courses that are small, or also canyons. And for us as civil protection, it's important to focus on flash floods because of its fast behavior and also the strong relationship that this type of event has with urban planning, and also our difficulties to respond to this type of events. So when facing climate change, for us, it's important to better understand if these torrential events could potentially increase, if they will become more frequent, and how the areas at risk will change. And finally, our third priority for CLIMAAX is on heat waves. I mean, due to the relevant impacts on population and economic activities. I mean, what we can expect, we are actually facing a quite severe drought period. So in face of climate change, we will need to reinforce our understanding of these events. And also we will need to work closely with other stakeholders to better plan, prepare, and respond to heat waves. Of course, those are a lot of questions. We don't expect CLIMAAX to solve all of them, but just having some insights, and some of those will help us in better prepare and respond to disaster risk. I mean, we will be able to give recommendations on land use planning, for example, or we will need to better maybe design some early warning system or redesign them. And so it's interesting for us to know if we need to review some plans or some protocols, especially when working with operative teams like firefighters or medical services. So if we move to the next slide, which is the last one. So as I have said, the civil protection system works with many institutions and organizations. So we already created little teams, what we call community of practice, here in the region, just for CLIMAAX. So we decided that it was interesting to work with other teams that they are dealing with that hazard in order to better brainstorm all these needs and the possibilities of CLIMAAX. And our work as a pilot started already some months ago. And here you can see some pictures because the partners, they visited our our region here. And we also had the opportunity to do a field trip to areas affected by 2 past events. So partners, they could visit an area that was affected by a flash flood in 2019, and also another area that was affected by a very, very severe wildfire in 2021. And now we are working with partners with a strong expertise in the hazards that I have mentioned, mainly with UPC and CHIMA, in order to develop the methodologies and to explore how to use local data and knowledge. We still don't have any output, but we hope that in the next weeks we will be able to have the first results. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ainara, for that great presentation. It certainly also looked like a good visit. So thank you very much for sharing that with us, and we're eagerly looking forward to the next time where perhaps we'll be able to share the results that you were mentioned. I'd now like to give the floor to Christina, who will tell you all about Setúbal's pilot activities.
Hello. Good afternoon to you. For us in Setúbal, it's still midday, but thank you for inviting us. I'm going to talk a little bit on our expectations and our work concerning climate action on the CLIMAAX project. So can you go on with the slides? Thank you. So Rábida is a mountain. It's a region here in Setúbal that comprehends mainly 3 municipalities: Setúbal, Sesimbra, and Palmela. It's an iconographic area from the south part of Lisbon, of the Setúbal Peninsula. And we had a project that ended in December of last year, where funded by e-grants, and where we made our local adaptation plans for climate change on these 3 municipalities. And for that, can you change the slide? Thank you. We worked with EGOT, that's an institution from the University of Lisbon, that applied this methodology to determine our main risks at the Rábida territory. We worked on susceptibility, on exposure, and on social vulnerability. So, considering this methodology, we already have from EGOT through this project to the Rábida region. The next slide, please. Jip, next slide. This is the Setúbal municipality, but you can see there's Sesimbra on your left and Palmela on your right. So all the Rábida area was studied by the professors of EGOT team, and we had a multi-risk scenarios. Next slide, Chip, please. I'm giving you the example for Setúbal municipality territory, but this was made for all the 3 municipalities that I was talking about. So as you can see, on the approach of the multi-danger risk, we have the maps for the present situation, the actual situation, with mainly downtown Setúbal having high risk on fast flooding, mainly fast flooding issues. So we analyze the risk like forest fires, heat waves, flash flooding, estuary flood, sea level rise, windstorms, landslides, etc. So these are the results of this analysis with our SCPB for 4.5 and 8.5 and the actual situation. So considering that we had already a very high risk at Setúbal downtown, we took measures on adaptations concerning that territory. So the next video will be a short story about the intervention that we made. Next slide, please. Jeep.
Setúbal is surrounded by protected areas such as the Rábida mountain range and the Sado estuary. However, the Mediterranean climate, typical of southern Europe, with the hot and dry summers and rainy winters, increases the risk of floods, a phenomenon exacerbated by climate change. To address this issue, the Setúbal City Council invested over 3 million euros in the Várzea Urban Park, where retention basins were constructed to prevent flooding in the downtown during heavy rainfall. In this park, we prioritize natural-based solutions because we believe that nature is the best teacher. We have kept the soil as natural as possible, prioritized native vegetation, and emphasized the protection of existing biodiversity. For all these reasons, this is the most innovative park in Europe. It's the first constructed with natural-based solutions on such a significant scale, combining urban characteristics and allowing people to enjoy nature in the heart of the city.
Thank you, Jeep. So as you can see, we've been working on climate action, on climate scenarios. We have this data from EGOT, but for us, it's quite important to be as a pilot on CLIMAAX project because we need to corroborate this data. We need also to work on other issues that we didn't address with the plaque Rábida project. And we, right now, at the present, we are revising our municipality emergency plan from our civil protection team. And we want to revise it, taking into account the climate scenarios and the climate risks. And for us, it's quite important to have the toolbox in order to test our data and also to be able to put some more information from our part. And then we are also working on our climate action plan. We are planning the territory and trying to prepare the territory for climate impacts. As you can see, you already started with some implementation on the terrain, and we are quite worried if we are doing it well, if it's not a phenomenon of maladaptation. For instance, right now we already know that the Várzea Park is a success because we had huge floodings the last winter all through the Lisbon metropolitan area. It was quite serious, but here in Setúbal, the Várzea Park held the situation and there was no flooding at the city center. So we already know that it works, but we know that these types of events will be quite harder in the future for flash floodings, for landslides, for forest fires. That's something that also concerns us a lot because more than 50% of our territory, it's natural protected area. Rábida, it's a natural park. And we have also a natural reserve and a marine reserve at the estuary level and a marine park. So we are quite interested in knowing what the toolbox will bring in terms of information for our territory and also to be able to corroborate our data. And that's it. Thank you, Jip.
Thank you very much, Christina. I really enjoyed your presentation, also the video, very lovely. So thank you very much for that. And then I would like to give the floor to Jelena, last but certainly not least, to share the ins and outs of their region.
So, hello everyone, can you hear me?
Perfectly,
yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So, my name is Martin Kuban. I'm the part of the CAIO company, which take care of the Jelena pilot. And now I will present you some things that we are actually doing now here, or the plans that we want to achieve from this project. We can go to another slide. Okay, so basic information about the Žilina. The Žilina have 80,000 inhabitants. Around the city, there is a confluence of 3 rivers. Average temperature in the summer is 17.3 Celsius. In the winter, in January, minus 3.1 Celsius. The annual rainfall is between 760 and 780 millimeters. And the snow cover is between around 70 days per year. So we can go into another slide. Okay, so the main goals in Žilina, it's we want to improving the city climate change risk assessment and the adaptation via expert system for risk event forecasts and the recommendation for preventing and mitigating the effects of the risk events using actual available software tools and available data integrated from local, national, and global resources. Special benefit from this project is getting a European perspective on the issue and the opportunity to tune on system via interaction with experts from the other parts of the Europe. We can go to another slide. Okay, so these are the interaction of the end users of this project. Should be the risk and damage events managers, which this project can improving the system of the risk events, predicting and reacting to the climate events, the risk events. The environment departments, improving climate change adaptation strategy and activities, road maintenance and greenery around the city. City architecture's office, it will be good for them to improving city development plans and supporting their statements towards citizens and applications, and the citizens and visitors of the city. We can go to another slide. Okay, so in the Žilina project, we are focusing on multiple risk events, but we mainly focusing, we divide the risk in three groups based on the ABC groups. The A is the highest priority. And in this highest priority, we focuses on the urban floods, fluvial and fluvial, and extreme heat. These are the events that are most that brings most risk to the city. The other group is like landslides, windstorms, and droughts. And the last group is blizzards and forest fires. Can go to another slide. Currently, we made a lot of discussion with the local authorities in Slovakia, and we're collecting the data on time, place, intensity, and the national data on flood events in Žilina and overheated areas around the city. We nowadays communicating with a lot of authorities in Slovakia, with cities, fires and rescue services, Slovak hydrometeorological institutions, University of Žilina, Žilina Region Office, and Slovak Environmental Agency. We putting together all the data that they have on this team, and we try to find the best possible result from this project for them. From these projects, we will be good for them. Yeah, so I think we can go to another slide. Okay, that's all for Žilina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin, for that insight into Žilina. I'd like to thank all the pilot regions for their interventions today. I think it's very good to see the first hand experience, and I think it's very valuable. So now that we gained insights from all the pilot regions, I think it is time to understand how you can be a part of this transformative initiative. So I would like to introduce Anka Marin from Funding Box here with us today to provide you with the details about the open call to receive funding and assistance through CLIMAAX that is coming up. So please feel free to take the stage.
Thank you very much, Jip. And hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for making time to hear us out. And we hope you'll get all the information you need in order to continue our potential collaboration within this project and this first open call. A lot has already been said, so I will just jump into the main points of this first open call that we are launching within the CLIMAAX project. Overall, we are estimating to have 2 open calls for both regions and communities. And these will happen. The first one is estimated to start next month, very soon, around the 8th of December. We'll communicate the exact dates as soon as we have confirmation by all parties. However, within the 2 open calls, we expect to select at least 60 final beneficiaries. It has been mentioned that we are delivering this cascade funding, that is the money that the CLIMAAX Consortium has received from the Commission. Part of it is called financial support to third parties, and we are going to give that money to applicants that successfully pass through the evaluation and selection process in these 2 open calls. So we are looking to having at least 60 final beneficiaries after running these 2 open calls, one launching next month, as mentioned, and the other one after the summer of 2024. So what we are going to look at when we are evaluating and analyzing the proposals, in addition to what has been said regarding the context of CLIMAAX and challenges that we are trying to surpass with this project, is that we would like to get to a mix of beneficiaries, a pool of beneficiaries where diversity is a key point, and we are trying to reach with these open calls a very wide audience, and hopefully we'll reach all EU regions and have beneficiaries from all of them. What is very important is that we do understand the complexity of the project, and there have been questions so far regarding some technical, some requirements, or maybe some skills the applicant may need to employ in order to successfully present a proposal. But it is very important for you to know that we are going to be alongside you the entire process of the application. So we do provide support in the midst of a community that we are creating, which will function as a help desk where we will address all questions, and also technical support and guidance throughout the preparation of the application form. For both open calls, we are applying, if you will see further down in my slides, we are applying a funnel approach when it comes to the selection, and this is a very transparent and very well detailed process in the guide for applicants. So now going back to what we have at hand, that is the first open call launching this year, what's left of this year. This will just one slide before that, Jip, please. I'll keep it shorter. I get your message. Okay. We have an available budget of around 5 million euros to distribute in this first open call, and the maximum amount of funding that one applicant becoming a selected beneficiary after going through the validation process is up to 300,000 euros. We are saying up to 300,000 euros because it depends very much on the region, on the country, on the not region of the applicant where they come from, but this will be very clearly detailed in the guide for applicants, and depending on the country you are applying for, you can easily identify the maximum amount of financing you may get. The support program, so for the selected beneficiaries will enter a support program. We call it a support program because in addition to the financing, you will be accompanied by members and technical mentors of the CLIMAAX Consortium in order for you to achieve the goals and the objectives that you set up in the application process, okay? So this support program will last 22 months from the date of signing the subgrant agreement for the selected beneficiaries with the CLIMAAX Consortium. The application process will happen in just one stage, so you will have the option to start the application as soon as the platform opens, estimated on the 8th of December, up to the 8th of March. You can initiate the process, you can go back as many times as you'd like, You can submit it and even go back to it and do some changes before the deadline if you feel you need to. It will be done only online through the application form, only in English, and the budgets that we estimate, we expect you to estimate in the application form have to be in euros. Next slide, please. Okay, so the timeline that I've already briefly mentioned is for us to launch next month. In addition to this first pre-open call session, we are estimating to have other 2 online events. Everyone who has joined this event today, everyone who starts an application on our platform or has reached out to us through the help desk or any other means will be notified about our webinars, online webinars on how to apply. And that's when we are getting more into details and specific questions regarding your specific proposal. So after the deadline, we'll enter the 5-stage evaluation process, and we expect that to last throughout March and April. And by the end of April next year, the selected beneficiaries, hopefully exhausting all our 5 million euro budget, will be notified about the results. Next slide, please. So who are we looking for? It has been talked a bit about, and basically we want to keep this open, but within some certain requirements and specifications. We are looking for regions, areas with high vulnerability to climate change impacts, requiring the implementation of climate change adaptation strategies and or update, because it was asked before, update their risk management plans. So whether we are talking about a public body that includes regional or local authorities, municipalities of more or less than 50,000 inhabitants, public agencies, as long as there is a mandate within your activity to develop climate-related risk assessment or risk management plans in a given region or community, that means that you are an eligible applicant for this call. We expect individual applications. That is, you cannot form a team or a consortium to apply for that. But as Bart said, you can already know who you rely on in the execution of the project or even at the application stage if you have identified entities that can support you at this stage. The other type of eligible applicant is coming from the non-profit area, and we are looking at legal entities representing a local regional community. So this is where you could actually be a sort of consortium, right? If you have connections and you have established yourself as the legal entity, then you can, and of course, again, you have a mandate in climate change adaptation, and are engaged in joint actions, developing activities in areas with high vulnerability to climate change impact, you are an eligible member. You also have to be established in one of the EU member states and its overseas countries and territories. Oof, I don't think we took that into consideration in the toolkit, like the overseas countries and territory specific climates. Anyway, that was a parenthesis. And Horizon Europe associated countries, that includes Albania, which was asked before, but it does not include the UK, unfortunately, for the time being. Next slide, please. Regarding the activities that you can expect to develop throughout the 22-month support program, when you are writing your proposal, you should make sure that the proposal's aim is to generate this climate risk assessment, okay? So we are looking at this following methodological principles of coherence. That means you have a specific hazard in your mind, you know the exposure, the vulnerability, and you manage to transfer that to us, that information. There is a quantitative approach in your proposal, and you address a specific climatic region and ensure spatial and temporal comparability. And this allows climate risk synthesis across multiple regions and time windows. We have designed for for the proposal to have the same structure and for the evaluation process to be addressed from the same perspective, we have enabled these 3 steps, 3 phases that your proposal should consider when detailing the activities that you would like to have financed. Okay, so these 3 phases, as you can see them here, it's the common methodology applicable at regional local scale in Europe, the refined regional local HR analysis and risk assessment, and the better regional local adaptation strategies and risk management plans. This is very well detailed in the guide for applicants. It has been touched upon by Bart previously in the beginning of the presentation, but this is something that you need to read very much into detail when you are looking at the documentation for the open call. Next slide, please. We said that we have a funnel approach to this evaluation of the applications that we may be receiving. So we are looking at the evaluation criteria such as relevance, your ambition for this proposal, where would you like to get with this project, the dimension. So how does this contribute to local, regional, long-term policy objectives, the community engagement in climate change adaptation. So how is that relevant within your community, within your region, and the European dimension, that is, as it has been said, that we are part of this mission for climate adaptation strategy, and within that scope, every project that gets financing, even if it's cascade funding, it has to touch upon these strategies and find its place within that European dimension. Then we are going to look at impact, the vulnerability to climate change. And again, we are providing very detailed information depending on where you are applying from, where you are established, for you to understand what type of high risk or vulnerability level you are on. Limited resources are again something that we are giving priority to regions which are considered to have less resources compared to other regions, and the expected impact of the implementation. And when it comes to the last criterion, the implementation, we look at your team, at your resources, and the initial implementation plan that you have at the proposal level. I say initial because this is something that the selected beneficiaries, the selected applicant will work upon when they start the program. Next slide, please. So this is the process that I've been describing more or less. Once the open call ends, we are starting this admissibility and eligibility check. That is a very brief process, and we are communicating and we are passing on the list of eligible applications to the project partners to do the scope screening, in out of scope screening, and we inform all applicants about the status. Then the selected the in-scope list of applicants will move on to the independent individual evaluation, where they are scored according to the 3 criteria that I mentioned before, and this will produce a ranking list that will make the object of debate for the project's core members meeting in a consensus in order to deliberate and vote on the highest ranking applications that will enter the support program. The next phase is for a formal check regarding the eligibility of the applicant, of the entity that you are coming from, and that's the only moment where we are asking for documents from you to verify if you are compliant with the eligibility criteria regarding the type of entity. So in the application process, we do not require you, unless you'd like to submit some presentation, some visual material to support your applications, we do not require you to provide any documents at that stage. Only after you have been selected, you would have to pass this formal check and sign the sub-grant agreement, which will detail the conditions of collaborations and the milestones, the deliverables that you have to present throughout the 22 months execution of the project. It is very important for you to know that the money that you get, the grant, is paid as a lump sum, which means that it is paid against deliverables that are set upon previously with your mentors in the first months of the execution of the project. So you will be working on an individual mentoring plan, and that's when you define the deliverables and the milestones, and you have to be compliant with that in order to get the money. No need to show contracts or invoices in order to receive the financing. Next, please. Okay, so how to apply? We have enabled a specific microsite for this call for proposals. It will be live starting with the 8th of December, and that's where you'll find all the resources that you may need for this, for you to get a full idea of the application process and the proposals that we are looking for. You'll have a guide for applicants with detailed information, a frequently asked questions document where you will update all the information, and the questions that we receive from you will be found there in order for everyone to get the same level of information about this open call. The application form is in fact an online, let's call it questions and answers. And you also have some drop-down lists where to select from. We are trying to keep this as simple as possible, and we do understand that many times there are not enough available resources within public bodies in order to prepare and submit a proposal. So that's why we are here to support you with every step of the way. In addition to that, for the selected applicants, you will mostly need to subcontract the services that you will need in order to execute the assessment, the climate risk assessment. So you can subcontract most of the activities that you don't have expertise on, like I heard Python earlier. So if you're not an expert in Python, you need to use that. That is some expertise that you can subcontract. And again, together with the EURADA, I'm sorry. No, I thought my cough was over. Okay, so together with the EURADA and the other project partners, we will assist you in providing templates for the public procurement and sorry, again, the entire process regarding contracting external services to assist you with the execution of the project. So in addition to the materials that you'll find on the microsite and the application form, you'll have links to the framework and the toolbox in order for you to get access at all times, and the technical support team in the help desk that I mentioned before, or by email. You can also reach out by email. As I mentioned, the application form is thought of as a simple process, as a simple step, and it is your work towards convincing us and presenting us in sufficient detail, respecting the guidelines that we provide, that your application has a very clear objective and is compliant with what we are looking for in the beneficiaries of this first open call in CLIMAAX. I think that was my last slide, but just to check.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh.
We just have a slide with the contact information, such as the website and the email address for now. But thank you very much for that insightful presentation.
Thank you, Jake.
In the meanwhile, there has been one additional question in the chat, too, as we speak. The first one being, besides Albania, which other Eastern European neighboring regions can apply?
Okay, so we have Albania, Armenia, Bosnia, Georgia, Iceland, Israel, Kosovo, Moldova, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Norway, and Serbia. You'll have all that information in the guide for applicants.
Thank you very much for that. Then we have another question from Martin. Thank you for the event and the provided information. Is there expected, either from the public authority or contributing partner applying for the call, any form of co-financing?
We don't call it co-financing because, as I said, we are paying against deliverables and we are not asking for the accountancy or proof or justification of the expenses that have been made. That means that your total project cost can exceed those 300,000 euros that we give as a limited grant. However, we'll never ask for you to make proof that you spent over the 300,000 euros. So it has to be clear that there is a distinction between the financing that you get and the total cost of your project. If your total cost of the project is estimated to be above the maximum financing, then you will have to support those costs yourself. But we will never ask for you to justify. If your total cost is 420, we'll never ask for you to justify the entire amount. You'll just be paid the 300,000 euros against deliverables.
Thank you very much. And then Michelle is asking when the complete guide will be made public.
Everyone will get access to the information at the same time when the call launches, which we expect to be on the 8th of December at 9 o'clock Brussels time.
Great, thank you so much. Another question just came in. Can we use the funding from you together with other funding from, for example, national governments in combination?
We are checking for double funding, but it will have to be for exactly the same project and the exactly same idea. And we are checking for double funding at the European level. So you cannot present the same project and get it financed twice from Horizon Europe.
All right, I think those were all the questions for now. Thank you very much for your presentation, for your intervention, and for answering all of the questions. And indeed, all the information will be published later on the website as well. You'll be able to rewatch this session and see the slides as well. So I think that concludes today's session. I would like to thank each and every one of you in the audience for taking the time with being here with us today, as well as, of course, the CLIMAAX Consortium and everyone with interventions today for your time and efforts. We'll have another session on how to apply for the open call in January, so please keep an eye out for that one. There are multiple ways to do that, which is going, for example, to our website, to our social media, but we are also launching our newsletter, which you can scan here through the QR code to sign up for it. And then you'll be aware of all the latest developments in the project at all times. So without keeping you much longer, I would like to wish you a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope to see you back the next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeep, for organizing this. Bye, everyone.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeep. It's been a pleasure working with you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.